Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am Grand Cat, and Merry Christmas Eve, everyone! Christmas is tomorrow, can you believe it? Oh my goodness, Christmas is tomorrow. So before we tell you who number 2 is, we're going to do a quick rundown of some of the people that didn't make the top 25 cut that I very, very much considered. So the first one, so not number 2, I will tell you when number 2 is coming, but the ones just outside of that top 25, we have... when I find them. It's under M, and that is because it is under M because it is Mr. McMahon. Yes, I was going to put big old Vince McMahon up here. I thought he could definitely be in the top 25. I mean, absolutely terrible wrestler, but oh my god, what a heel, and so good on microphone, and not just that, but how much he's done for the entire wrestling industry. Of course, I was also going to consider, up here, number C, that's weird, is China, the ninth wonder of the world, who, in my opinion, is still, I think, the one that really broke the industry for women's wrestling. I mean, before you had China, there was ones like, Ivory and I've forgotten the others. Oh my goodness. Ivory's the only one I can think of. Ivory and Jacqueline, Sable, that sort. But when China came along, she made people look. And also the fact that China didn't want anything to do with the women's division. She wanted to be part of the main event. I think she was one of the ones that really, really pushed wrestling, onwards. Of course, we also have up here Edge. Edge not making the top 25 cut, and he was close. He was really up there. I really did think that Edge would possibly be in that top 25, but there are just so many other people that just came about and didn't quite get up there. Of course, along with Edge, we also had Eddie Guerrero, who did not manage to reach that top 25. If these people were in your top 25, let me know as well, because I am very interested. We also have the Macho Man, Randy Savage, didn't quite make the top 25 as well. And again, another fantastic wrestler, but just didn't make top 25 on my list. Let's see, we also have, beginning with R, Ric Flair, who, is one of the icons of the business. When Hulk Hogan was in WF, Ric Flair was WCW, or he was the NWA champion, as he would call it, the true world champion. Of course, while we're talking about WCW, we can't forget about big old Goldberg, of course. Also not managing to reach the top 25, which is really, really surprising, because he is, a really big icon of the industry, but I just felt he didn't get there. He just didn't get enough. And there, definitely not on the same level as Stone Cold Steve Austin. As much as some people might disagree, I really wanted to put Big Quiche in here, Big Rikishi, because I don't think he got the proper push that he deserved. I think he could have been much, much better, but that is partly why he wasn't in the top 25. Of course, we had Undertaker, and unfortunately I couldn't find the space to put in Kane, who of course is one of the great icons of the entire wrestling industry. Of course, now the mayor of Knoxville County, Georgia. Of course, the devil's favourite demon, the big red machine. I couldn't find the space for him. We have, of course, also big old AJ Styles, who I just got the Survivor Series War Games Octane version of. Haven't proed him yet, but I do have 2 of them. And there he is. There's the phenomenal one, who was one of my favourite wrestlers for a good long while, but just hasn't done enough in recent time. They haven't given him the proper push that he deserves. He's, he hasn't really done an awful lot, if we're being honest, since the Boneyard match with Taker. And even at that, he was doing a lot of stuff with the club, the OC, and less about himself. And of course, he did have a phenomenal run in TNA. And while we're talking about icons, how can you forget about when we get to him. It's Sting! Yes, that is right. Currently still in AEW, still going. And I mean, he is, an old school wrestler back from the times of like the Beach Days, of course, doing the Crow gimmick in, the 1990s WCW. Huge big thing there. One of my other favourite wrestlers is, actually it'll be under W, not under R, and it is William Regal. That was unusual. William Regal, GM of NXT. Oh no, is that really like? Oh wow, I thought there was more William Regal images, but no. Okay, this is what we've got to work with. But yeah, good old William Regal, a million beagles, as Al Snow would call them. Yes, didn't make it into that top 25 list. Lastly, the last two that I'm going to give mention to is Rey Mysterio, who didn't make the top 25 list, which I'm sure is going to really, really upset Bay, that his boy Rey didn't even make my top 25 list. So I can only apologise to him. But Rey Mysterio, there's still a part of me that's a little bit annoyed that he came out number 30 of that Royal Rumble that Daniel Bryan wasn't in. I mean, I know it's stupid, but I mean, also, I just do not see Rey Mysterio as one of the greats of the business. I know a lot of people do, but it's not for me. And the last one, this is more about where I came into wrestling. It is Bret the Hitman Hart. And as Stone Cold once said, you put an S on the star of Hitman, and you have a pretty accurate description of him. Yeah, I was never a fan of Bret Hart because whenever I saw him, he was always a heel. He was never good. He was booked terribly in WCW, which is the point when I started watching wrestling and didn't even really watch WCW. But I was aware that people just didn't like him. I'd seen all the previous stuff, and of course, he was a huge rival to one of my biggest heroes growing up. One of the reasons why I grew my hair long, because I thought he was so cool looking. It is now time for number 2 of the list. Only one person better than him that I could think of. And of course, this is someone that's better than Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is someone that's better than The Undertaker. So remember, this is my favourite list. Let's take it with a huge grain of salt, but number 2 is the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. He was one of the coolest, baddest people back in the early 90s. A man that did not care about what people thought. I mean, we're talking the old school Shawn Michaels when he was absolutely hated. He was so smug, and everything after like the Montreal Screwjob. I mean, he said that he hated himself, that he didn't like where he was going. He was hated by everyone in the company. He had to basically have a stranglehold on the title. He, was backstage politicking with everyone, with his clique and everything. He was also like really, really, I think just upset and depressed that, his good buddies Scott Hall and Kevin Nash left for WCW. And of course, he had the back injury that he had from when he'd fought The Undertaker, and he was thrown out on top of the casket. That gave him a back problem. And he was so not trusted that when Shawn Michaels went out for WrestleMania 14, Undertaker taped up his fist and he says, if you come back with that title, you're going to deal with me. And that was to make Shawn Michaels drop the belt to Undertaker, because Undertaker was so convinced that Shawn Michaels would refuse to drop the title clean. Because there's so many times that Shawn Michaels had the belt and said, oh, I'm going to have to forfeit it, I'm injured and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, he had a lot of demons that he had to fight back then. But when he left at WrestleMania 14, he came back as WWE Commissioner. He was there for a while, but then he had his comeback run, and he was against Triple H. And when he made his comeback, he was arguably better than he was when he left in his prime. No one does that. No one comes back after years and is better than they were before. I mean, that's insane. That's incredible. And I mean, let's talk about the finisher, the Sweet Chin Music. One of the best finishers of all time. There's 3 different versions of it. There is they've got silly names. The first one is called Speed Chin Music, which is the one that he snaps out of nowhere. It's just, like out of nowhere. It normally doesn't finish a match. It's like the weakest version of the Sweet Chin Music. And then he's got the proper Sweet Chin Music, where there's the setup for it, and then he does, the proper Sweet Chin Music. But then he's also got the Super Sweet Chin Music, which is when he tunes up the band in the corner first of all, waits for the opponent to stand up, and then does the side shuffle over to them, and then, the full-on kick to the face, and that's normally the game ender, and it's so cool to see. His elbow drop, it was just called the elbow drop, but it's also been called the Heartbreaker, because Jim Ross has said a few times that elbow straight to the heart. He's also said it for Stone Cold as well. But it was at one point known as the Heartbreaker. For the Heartbreak Kid. And of course, the original finisher was the Teardrop Suplex, and the Teardrop Suplex was crap. It was trash. So thank goodness he changed it to the Sweet Chin Music, and breaking up with Mark Gennari, Sweet Chin Music, and then throwing him through the plate glass window in the barbershop is one of the best things that Michael Hickenbottom ever did. That is Shawn Michaels' real name, for anyone that wasn't aware. But also, I mean, the guy was good looking. This look here of him being aggressive, it's so good, and being smug and everything as well. And it's he could get away with just he could make you absolutely hate him. Just how good he was, and also he could back it up in the ring, which was so incredibly irritating. This is one of my favourite images of Shawn Michaels. It's young Shawn Michaels when you can see that he's, got a chip in his shoulder, that he's, pissed, and he's he just wants to Sweet Chin Music you. But yeah, Shawn Michaels is arguably the greatest of all time. Very, very arguably the greatest of all time. In terms of everything that he did, physique, athleticism, everything that he did on mic, everything he did with D-Generation X. He almost got WWF cancelled a few times. And he didn't give a crap. He didn't care. And that is incredible. Hulk Hogan ran the show. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the main character, but Shawn Michaels held the WWE in his hands. If he wanted to, he could have dropped that ball and shattered the entire thing. If Shawn Michaels had jumped to WCW, WWF would have folded. WCW would have won the war. Shawn Michaels was really the centerfold of everything. He was the greatest heel. He was the greatest face. He was so good on the microphone. If you want to see an amazing match, some people have said that it's boring by today's standards, but if you watch the first, it was the first Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. They go the entire hour without either man pulling off a single victory, and then it goes to sudden death. When it goes to sudden death, Bret has Shawn Michaels in the sharpshooter, and Bret taps out after the bell goes, and then they restart the match on 0-0, and that's when Shawn Michaels wins, and the boyhood dream comes true. And oh my god, it is an amazing finish. It's an amazing match. It's a very, very long match, but there's some cut down versions of it that just give you the highlights, and you can see just how amazing that was. The two of them, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. But Shawn Michaels had so many great matches. With Stone Cold at WrestleMania 14, he's had some amazing matches with Undertaker. Even just the one, let's call it Shawn Michaels' last match, because we pretend that they won in Saudi Arabia where he was in the tag match, didn't count. But when he had his his, like the streak versus the career match against Undertaker. Oh my goodness. I think that one's actually a much better match than the first one, but a lot of people will argue that the first match that Undertaker and Shawn Michaels had was actually better, and both of them are correct, because both of them are amazing matches. Both of them are fantastic. Both of them are phenomenal. And yeah, Shawn Michaels, arguably the best of all time. But then I would also argue Stone Cold could also be the best of all time, and I'd also argue that The Undertaker could also be the best one of all time. But I put Stone Cold at number 3. I put Undertaker at number 4 because I genuinely think Shawn Michaels is a little bit better. Not much, but he's a little bit better. And just everything that he did with the industry. I mean, even going on, what was it, Playgirl magazine, and showing up naked wearing like the WF Championship to cover himself. It's like, oh my goodness, that's really not the way that a WF champion should be, parading themselves as, or showing themselves off as. And everything Shawn Michaels is just gold. It's amazing. He is fantastic. Whether it's old Shawn Michaels, whether it's young Shawn Michaels. I mean, not too young. I mean, when he was in the Rockers, he wasn't particularly amazing. But like when he got that rocket strapped to him, when he started getting into those main event pushes, oh my goodness, he was untouchable. He was the best, with the exception of possibly when Stone Cold took over from him. But then when he came back, oh my goodness, he was amazing. And that's why Shawn Michaels, HBK, the Heartbreak Kid, takes number 2 on my list. And that is going to be it for this video, folks. I hope you all have a very lovely Merry Christmas Eve, and tomorrow, Christmas Day, we will find out who number 1 on this list is. Take your guesses in the comment section below. See if you can guess ahead of time as to who you think number 1 is. I'll give you a hint. It's someone that I haven't mentioned on this list yet. Maybe mentioned them in passing. Maybe said that other wrestlers had matches with them. But I have not actually shown you any image of them. So take that into account. I'm sure a lot of people are going to see this as controversial, but I'm going to explain why. So look forward to that. You all have a lovely Merry Christmas when it comes tomorrow. And we will see you all in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.